Just heard about the cloud, and I am really scared.
What the hell is a cloud?
Man, it is everything or nothing. It will control you like a drug.
Is it dangerous?
I don't understand why we can't.
Very dangerous. My friend Swiggy was working at KTL Solutions, a cloud company. He could no longer have children because of his exposure to the cloud.
Oh man, the cloud kills me. I hate the cloud.
Well, unlike the burnouts from the Big Lebowski, the cloud is neither scary nor should it be hated or feared. They are truly wrong. What we are going to talk about a little bit of history for a couple minutes, and then we'll define the cloud in that way. The computational services started with mainframes in the 80s and 90s. They were large, it took up a whole room, and they used terminals to get computational services to people. The next generation was something we call client-server. Client-server is where you have a server, and you have some of the computational processes on larger client machines. This is by far the most prominent computational architecture in today's business and homes. The third is obviously what we're going to talk about today, which is the cloud. So the client server has the ability to be on-premise, hosted, and on-premise is exactly what it is. You own the servers, you own the software, and you maintain it on-premise. Hosting is a hybrid model that's been around for about 10 years. That is where you take the hardware, you still own the software, and somebody else owns and maintains the hardware for you. So I have a pretty good metaphor for the cloud, and it might drive this home a little better. Many people don't remember, but back in 1910, 20, and 30, electrical services were first being used by manufacturing plants, offices, and homes. At that time, if you wanted electricity, you had to generate it yourself. So whether you're a home, a small business, or a manufacturing plant, you bought a generator, you maintained it, and you provided that generator electrical service. You wired yourself for electrical services. That's not uncommon to where we are today, with client servers being the predominant form of the way we generate computational services. We are owning the method of creating computational services as well as distributing it. So just like the fact that we take electricity for granted, we go into a room, we turn the light switch on, we are basically renting electricity without knowing exactly where it comes from, how it was delivered, and that's the way the cloud is going to be for computational services. The cloud is having computational services, business applications, delivered to you in a rented manner over the internet, not where we're owning the method of producing the computational services. So with that fundamental understanding of what the cloud actually is, what is actually driving? And I've done some research over the past 3 or 4 months, and I actually went down to Houston last week to talk to Microsoft about this. And there's basically 5 trends that I can see are driving us to the cloud. The first trend is, slide title is a mouthful, but let me explain. In 2001, there was an application service provider model that was very similar to what we're thinking about today as the cloud. It was the cutting edge at the time. Applications could be rented and delivered to users for a fraction of the cost. Well, in Stanley Kubrick's movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the HAL 9000 computer frequently complained of having insufficient memory to compute. As an early cloud attempt, the ASP model debuted in 2001 also and failed because the internet was in its infancy. We all remember DSL, and the bandwidth at that time was not ready for the bandwidth of applications. I was doing architecture system design for point-of-sale systems all the way up until 2005. The very first question I asked for these retail stores with 5, 6, 7 sites was, do your remote sites actually have internet access and how reliable it is? That would influence my design for the point of sale system. And that's only in 2005. So the virtualization and multi-tenancy, virtualization is the ability to do multiple operating systems on the same server. And multi-tenancy is the ability to do multiple environments on the same processor. These two things have started to become relatively prevalent around 2006, 2007, 2008. And the virtualization and multi-tenancy are driving us to the cloud, allowing us to share servers much more easily. Final piece of this slide title is hardware. In 1965, a guy named Gordon Moore, one of the founders of Intel, postulated that hardware power doubles approximately every 2 years. This became known as Moore's Law. His prediction has continued for more than half a century and is expected to continue until at least 2020. Moore's Law describes a... Can you mute everybody, Tim? Okay. Moore's Law describes a driving force of technological change so that sharing hardware is easy. So hardware advancements, the virtualization multi-tenancy, has allowed shared resources while the internet bandwidth allows for fast and reliable remote access to applications. These improvements together are first trend.
Welcome to GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy.
New work environment. This involves two
There are 11 other callers on the call.
Apologize for that.
What's going on?
Welcome to GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy. There are 11 other callers on the call.
Work environments now where we have sick kids, we have snow days, traffic is terrible. We are a mobile distributed workforce. The federal government telework initiative, a green federal work at home initiative. So especially in our urbanized areas, working from home or working while traveling is normal. So we need our systems to work the way we work instead of the other way around, having us to work in an office. So the new work environment of mobility is driving us to the cloud. Second thing is a changing workforce. Let me explain this in a couple of different ways. We normally get invited in to help companies, organizations solve their problems using technology. I get invited in through either finance or IT. This is unusual because an HR person called me and invited me in to try to talk about some of their problems. So she had said that they were a growing organization, they were hiring rapidly, and she had needed to fill an applicant in finance and another one in their order processing department. The person in finance, she had an excellent candidate, vetted the resume, did a preliminary interview, and then had the person come in for a series of interviews with the people in finance. The second one was a similar process and had the second applicant come in for a series of interviews with the people in the order department. Both interviews went very well for the candidates, and this organization decided to hire them. They both sent offer letters. Both candidates turned down the offer letter, however, and the candidate in finance said that he was not going to work for a company that used Quattro Pro and Excel 7. The candidate in order entry said that they were using a green screen accounting system to help place orders. She felt that that wasn't going to do her career any good. So the crux of it is that the changing workforce is going to demand technology tools that work the way they work, And so I see mobile and changing workforce as driving us to the web, driving us to the cloud adoption. The third thing is I see with companies that have gone to the cloud the ability to use IT as a strategic partner. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. The IT departments, when I walk around in organizations, and I've been doing this for a long time, I see them doing three things. They're doing help desk support, they're doing training, and they're doing break fix. I call this the break fix carousel. So companies that have gone to the cloud free IT from this break fix carousel and allow them to become a strategic partner to the organization. The first two around are FedEx and UPS, both around 2004, 2005, freed up their email and their infrastructure to go to the cloud. This freed IT to develop a strategic competitive advantage by having the package delivery system allow clients to see where a package was all throughout the delivery process. Roadway, the Postal Service, and others fell behind. So what the IT department did after being freed from the break-fix carousel was help both UPS and FedEx create a barrier to entry for other competitors and former competitors. Nowadays, we take it for granted, but back then, you shipped a package, you assumed it was going to arrive in 2 or 3 days, but you had no knowledge of it. Second one is to provide an improved client experience. About 2007 or 2008, Sears decided to do the same thing that UPS and FedEx did. They put their infrastructure and email to the cloud and then told the IT department to help them create a strategic competitive advantage. What the IT department did was unique. I had a refrigerator that I bought from Sears in 2008, and after a couple months, it had developed a noise. Obviously not an appliance repairman, so I called Sears. And they sent a technician in. Technician came in, went to the refrigerator, spent about 10 minutes with it, diagnosed the issue, and then from here, the client experience improved tremendously for me. What the technician did was pulled out a ruggedized laptop, connected to the home Sears office, proceeded to order the part that the appliance needed, and then determined by looking through the supply chain all the way through the back order that the part would arrive at my home in 10 days. They then proceeded to schedule the follow-up technician. It wasn't them, it could have been anybody, while I had my calendar in front of me on my kitchen counter. At that time, this was a unique client experience. It saved me the trouble of having to know when the part was delivered and then recall Sears, wait on hold, explain to them with some number that I had a follow-up technician required, and all this was done independently. That unique client experience was developed by IT after they got off the break-fix carousel. So I see that as one of the trends that people are doing, helping people go to the cloud. I do get into a lot of people's offices, and I do see a lot of systems, and I see this is another reason that people are moving to the cloud. I'll tell you a story of a client that I put a small accounting system in. They had 2 or 3 users. We put an accounting system in there. I gave them all the specs for the server that the client server model needed to use. And when myself and my team got to the site, they had not purchased a server. I called up an infrastructure partner that I knew that had servers on the shelf. They were able to come over that day, install, configure a server, and hook it to their network. So we weren't delayed on our implementation of their accounting system. I normally follow up with a client in a year, and I was back there in a year. I asked them how the accounting system was working. They said it was working fine. And then I asked them about their disaster recovery and their backup. And they told me, well, they didn't have a server, and they weren't doing any backup, and they certainly weren't doing any disaster recovery. So I walked out of the conference room, took them down the hall to the coat closet where the server for their accounting system was whirring away. It hadn't been touched, maintained, upgraded, or no backups had been done in a year. Glad it was a good server, but this is not uncommon where I see disaster recovery not being taken seriously. In the clouds, it's taken very seriously. They will most likely have data failover, so that if the primary cloud hardware environment fails, you as a business user of their services won't most likely know it. They'll just switch to another center. They obviously do disaster recovery backups, and they obviously do data failover. So improved functionality is one of the reasons people are moving to the cloud. Scalable is something that I found out at this conference last week. I didn't even know that this was an issue, but I was talking to somebody who had put a system in for the San Diego Emergency Authority. They have a website where it's kind of like a 311 website where people can put in things to them that aren't emergencies. But if you remember back in 2010, San Diego was in a dry season and wildfires were all over the place. And the way the citizens could report smoke or suspected fires was through this website. The San Diego people went to their partner. They were in the clouds and scaled up by a factor of 50, knowing that they were going to be inundated with requests for services for smoke and fire. This was done in hours, not weeks. This could have not been done with an on-premise system. So the scalability of cloud is within hours, not weeks. The third thing is that it's platform agnostic. All of us work in our client-server environments on some server operating system. So you use the Windows world, Windows 2003, Service Pack 1, 2, Windows 2007, Windows 2010, with various service packs. Up in the cloud, it's going to be, and it is, platform agnostic. Everyone will be on the same operating system. So you're going to get improved functionality by having things linked instead of integrated. So the fourth trend is improved functionality driving people to the cloud. The last and fifth trend is by far the most powerful trend, and we'll talk a little bit about this. It is cost. The first thing is that you have no upfront software or hardware to purchase. So you can spend this money, if you choose, on innovation and business process improvement. The ROI is right up front. The second thing is that Gartner, which is a technology firm, a technology consulting firm that writes about technology, says that maintaining a system after you implement it is 2 to 3 times the cost of implementing a system. And that's often forgotten as we begin to think about a new system. We think about the hardware, we think about the software, we think about the services to get a new system up and running, but the life of a system is actually 2 to 3 times that cost in maintaining it. These costs obviously go away with the cloud because other people are maintaining both the software and the hardware. The third thing is predictable expenses. There's nothing like having your IT guy come into finance and say, hey, our server just crashed, I need 15 grand. So you have predictable expenses. No budget-busting surprises like a failed server. One caveat here, though, is that cloud is treated as an expense, unlike an on-premise hardware and solution. So it is not depreciable. I'm going to show some other things about cost. Aberdeen Group did a survey of 100 small and mid-sized CIOs after they had gone to the cloud. As you can see, the top 3 reasons their organization went to the cloud revolve around cost. So it's an overall driving factor towards the cloud. We talked about the 5 trends there are that are driving us to the cloud. And we also spoke about the failed ASP model. So a natural question comes to mind, at least in my mind, is this a fad, is this a trend, is the cloud here to stay? And the answer is yes. Let me give you a more personal story about cloud adoption. About 4 years ago, my wife is a transportation engineer. About 4 years ago, she opened her own business. Naturally, since her husband's in IT, she required her husband to set up her IT infrastructure for a company. Since I did not want to get on the break-fix carousel, I put her in the cloud. She had a hosted exchange, a hosted website, a hosted domain, and I put a SkyDrive up for her. About 4 months later, we were at a party, and one of her friends was thinking about owning her own company, and talked to her about the process of starting a company, and the conversation about IT came up. Her friend asked my wife, did you use the cloud? What do you think about the cloud? My wife said, no, I don't use the cloud. I think I would keep my systems close at hand. I'm not sure the cloud is here to stay. I had to laugh when I was hearing this conversation because it's the perfect cloud experience. My wife was using her services, her computational processes and services in the cloud and didn't even know it. And so that's a testament to how good her cloud services were. Never down, never interrupted, upgraded when she, on the weekends. So we define the cloud, the trends driving us to the cloud. I believe the cloud is here to stay. So what is our partner, Microsoft, doing about the cloud? Our team here at KTL went to Houston last week to try to understand what Microsoft is doing about the cloud. And people out there might think, well, Microsoft cloud? Well, it is a very, maybe a fairly unknown fact, but Microsoft was the first cloud software. Back in 1995, Microsoft launched Windows Update. And it was a very light application, ran in the background, and it ran independent of users. So it had limited bandwidth, and it did not cause it to fail like the ASP model we spoke about in 2001. Since then, other lightweight, and I mean low bandwidth, utility software and web services began to appear from Microsoft and other cloud providers. Instant messaging, web applications using lightweight HTML packets. As we talked earlier, trends that are driving us to the cloud now allow for heavier, and I'm talking about bandwidth intensive and memory intensive business applications as cloud services. Email, CRM, and ERP. Does anybody use ADP or Paychex for payroll? Well, those aren't cloud services, but if you use the HR side of those truly are cloud ERP services. So line of business ERP systems are being made available on the cloud, and we went to Houston to see their strategy. And their strategy is interesting, and there's a real logic behind it. Public, private, and hybrid cloud. The public cloud are those things that are going to run on Windows Azure. Windows Azure is Windows and SQL. Microsoft Office 365 are those Office products that you're familiar with, but it's also SharePoint and Exchange. Microsoft Link is the presence and communication technology. We might know them better as Live Meeting, Instant Messenger, Skype, and Voice over IP. Microsoft Dynamics CRM is the line of business system. These are the public cloud technologies available from Microsoft. So the strategy is to put these into the cloud, the public cloud. Their strategy towards ERP is a little different. It's called private cloud. And the reason for that is that ERP requires, in most cases, requires integrated software vendors, and ERP is molded to the way your business does things. So the private cloud is developing around the partner community for Microsoft Dynamics ERP products. So they're creating true solutions for ERP cloud. The goal of Microsoft and strategy is to use the public and private clouds integrated to create the best of both worlds. They are calling this the hybrid cloud. So That's what we found out last week about Microsoft's strategy for the cloud. I know I get these questions all the time. I've talked about cloud for some years now, and I still get these questions, apprehensions about moving to the cloud. My wife, as I talked earlier, is one of them. So we talked a little bit about some of the security issues. The encrypted SSL is a technology that allows your web browser, when you're in encrypted SSL, you'll see HTTPS up there. It allows your web browser to securely, through 128-bit encryption, go from your laptop or your desktop to the cloud and back. I would personally rather use my credit card to go to Amazon.com using encrypted SSL than to give it to a waiter in a restaurant. I think it's more secure using encrypted SSL. The other two things that people ask me about is who owns my data, and that is in the agreement that you sign with your cloud provider. Make sure it says that you own the data. I know Microsoft is very careful about that, and their agreements or contracts say that you do own the data. And then the last thing to consider is what if I want to change to on-premise? Is it difficult, and can it be done? It's a good question. I think if you look at the solutions and the contracts you're signing, you'll see the ability, what we call forklift, your solution back and forth from on-prem to the cloud. I know that the Microsoft Dynamics products allow this. I know that the Microsoft public cloud products offer this. There might be a whole host of reasons you want to do this, but check that out into any contracts that you sign before you sign. So we are moving on to 33 minutes now. I want to do a summary and Q&A. We talked about a little bit about what is the cloud. We talked about the trends moving to the cloud, and we talked about their strategy from Big Blue over there, Microsoft. I want to see if there were any questions right now. Any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I will bring that up. Well, I guess no questions. I want to just thank you for your time. I hope this was a half hour that you learned something. And if you have any questions at all, please email us to the sales@ktl.com email site. Thanks again. I appreciate your time.